Okay, now moving on. Any trip to hospital is tough, but it can be made even tougher if you're worried you or a loved one isn't getting the right treatment.
If you're feeling unheard and your questions go unanswered, there is actually another way to get help. And joining us for more is Dorothy Kamaker from Patient Advocates Australia. Dorothy, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I think perhaps we better start by explaining exactly what a patient advocate is.
It's usually a health professional with a strong background in clinical care. So I'm an ex-ICU and emergency department nurse who has then done extra training to become a patient advocate, to look at patient problems with their management, not problems with their treatment as such or medically, but to look at the management of their problems from the patient's own perspective. So to see things as the patient is experiencing them. And there's a bit of a distinction with patient advocates between an independent patient advocate such as me or a hospital advocate, because one will work for the hospital and have those priorities perhaps in the forefront, and the other works directly for the patient.
You're talking from experience. You fell victim to this yourself, right?
I did. I had an experience where I had acute abdominal pain, excruciating pain, and I fronted to the emergency department at RPA, and I had had pain for 12 hours before I got there, which they knew about, and 48 hours later, I still had no specialist surgeon with me at the forefront of their care. I was nobody's priority, and I was in terrible pain, and I couldn't get decent pain relief. I couldn't get a surgeon in front of me. My husband is a doctor. We're both in there batting for me. We were not winning. And when one of the doctors at the hospital said to me, "Boy, this could be peritonitis. You are at risk of peritonitis and sepsis." Then I panicked. I absolutely worried about my life.
How powerless did you feel in that time?
I didn't know I was going to be powerless. I was so confident when I went in that, first of all, I'm fairly assertive. I knew what was wrong with me. I knew that this abdominal pain was a surgical emergency, and I was being told that by everyone who saw me. But I was absolutely flummoxed by my inability to prevail against the inertia, the mismanagement that I was seeing. I was absolutely stunned.
When you think of that, isn't it, like here you are, you're a trained nurse, a patient advocate, your husband is an anaesthetist. You'd think if anyone was going to be treated well in hospital, it would be you.
That is the message I came out of this with. Honestly, the one thing I know is that I've experienced other clients, but I didn't expect how disempowered a patient was and how unable you are to advocate for yourself. And the one thing that saved me, within seconds, when we got a patient advocate to act for us, we went and had somebody advocate for us from outside. Within about 40 minutes or an hour, I had the pain team in front of me. Within an hour, I had the surgeon in front of me, and I'm on the operating list for that afternoon. Now, I know that's happened when I've interacted for patients. So I guess I was overestimating my own ability to prevail. But when you're sick, you cannot advocate for yourself.
So what can an ordinary person do if they're in hospital? Do you just say, I want my patient advocate? How do you get that help?
Well, what you should do is go through all the processes that you think will work within the hospital. You don't have to jump out and get a patient advocate, just because someone doesn't, sort of answer your buzzer. But if you think, boy, I think this isn't going as well as it should, then you should think about getting some professional assistance, because you've usually got a family member with you and you're advocating for yourself, but very few people are health literate. There's a power imbalance between you and the staff. That's a natural power imbalance between any staff and any consumer. But often you've got narcotics on board and your own cognitive abilities have been limited. So the minute you think to yourself, this isn't right, you should get somebody on board. My clients ring me often a little bit too late. I've got to go in and undo some problems before I can start collaborating with their providers to get the care back on track. But I get calls from patients And I had a call last night when I was out to dinner from somebody who was sobbing because they were so... I've had 3 or 4 doctors call me to help them because they say they're in the same problem and they've got the same problem. So it's not limited to just everybody.
Average Joes.
Yeah.
Well, look, Dorothy, thank you so much for joining us today. I mean, for myself and probably you guys too, I'd never heard of a patient advocate before.
Yeah.
But,
Google patient advocate, you'll find me.
Great, thank you, Dorothy.
You're welcome.
Coming up.